Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zach and today I am driving a 1992 Dodge Stealth ES. Up front is a 3.0 liter V6 and down below is a 4-speed automatic transmission. Now I am super excited to be driving this here Dodge Stealth for many reasons, but mainly the fact that this was a collaboration between Chrysler and Mitsubishi, something I find incredibly weird. This car is a really clean example and I'm excited to share that with you today. But before we get on to anything else, I have a website, zackpraedel.com, where you can buy stickers and other merchandise when it becomes available. You can also submit your own vehicle to be reviewed by me through a quick and easy submission form, and you'd get a video of your car just like this one. And you could read my behind the scenes blog to see what I'm filming before it comes out on the channel. But let's get back to that 3-liter V6 under the hood. Well, the ES isn't quite the base model, and it actually got an upgraded 3-liter V6 over the standard Dodge Stealth. The base model made about 164 horsepower. This actually makes 222 because it gets dual overhead cams. However, of course, there was a turbo version on top of that, but this was a pretty mid-range Dodge Stealth. 222 horsepower is pretty good out of a little car like this, and definitely made it a lot of fun. Now, like I said, paired to it are some less desirables with that 4-speed automatic transmission. Now, you could get these in manual. However, the 4-speed was an option, which this car got. However, the turbo models did not have the 4-speed option. They were only available in stick shift. So, fun little fact for you. The other undesirable with the drivetrain is the fact that this is front wheel drive. The turbo manual model came with all wheel drive. It's kind of known for that. And so unfortunately, this is still just front wheel drive. You don't really notice it all that much. It just isn't that brochure style of car where it has a turbo and all-wheel drive and stick shift and things like that. It's fine. It does the job. How does it feel to actually drive a Dodge Stealth? It's pretty wide and big. At least for a sports coupe, it definitely feels long and it feels wide. It feels flat like a pancake, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It just doesn't have that tight nimbleness that a lot of the other Japanese sort of stars of the 90s sort of had. And that's always been my gripe. I have driven a 3000 GT VR4. That was the turbo all-wheel drive manual version, and I had my same feelings there. It's a little wide, it's a little long, it's a little big for my taste. With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have 3 main gauges. Off to the left is my tachometer, in the center is the fuel, and off to the right is my speedometer. Nothing really too crazy there, but this is very clearly Mitsubishi. This interior is kind of a mix of both worlds. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Off to the left of the gauge cluster, I do have my fog light switch and headlight poppers because this generation does have pop-up headlights, which I absolutely love. The steering wheel has a giant pillowy airbag. Again, very characteristic of the 90s. The horn buttons are shoved up into the corners to make room for this giant airbag because they didn't know how to make a horn button work with an airbag at the time. So that's kind of funny to see. Off to the left, I do have my dimmer switches and my power mirror switches. And then moving onto the door, I do have my window locks and power windows. However, they're sort of flat up against the door, something we don't really see much of anymore. And it doesn't make operating them really a joy. It actually makes it quite annoying, but that's okay. Moving into the center, I love these 3 molded gauges that you get. You get your coolant temperature off to the left, oil pressure in the center, battery voltage off to the far right. But I love this sort of ripple 350Z style gauges that they put in the center. I think that's a nice little touch and definitely stands out in the crowd. Then I get 2 climate control vents and the hazard switch, and then the climate controls themselves, where to send it off to the left, fan speed in the middle, temperature off to the right, and recirculating down below. I also love the fact that this car does have the original radio. It's so 90s. You could tell it's a little bit more advanced than what you would have found in Mitsubishi and Dodge products of the 80s, especially that K car that I drove. This is a huge advancement. And I love all the balancers, equalizers, faders, and all of that stuff. Then we come to the center console. So I do have a little cubby along with the cruise control on and off, and then I have the shifter itself. The shifter has an overdrive button off to the left, sort of this fighter jet style button up at the top. I really like it. However, it is sort of flimsy. Over the years, something in here has worn down. And the only reason I point it out is because this car is in such good condition. This seems to be a common issue I see with older Mitsubishis. The automatic shifters don't hold up incredibly well, so par for the course there. Then I do have a power and eco mode, of which when I put it into power mode, a little power icon shows up in the gauge cluster. And I love the fact that it has these shift lock instructions right in bold, right next to the shifter. Then we do have a 12-volt outlet and the ashtray, as well as I do get a center console with 2 little cup holder inserts in there. So we will big friggin' bottle test the 1992 Dodge Stealth ES, and unfortunately, however predictably, the Dodge Stealth fails the big friggin' bottle test. Now we gotta talk about the seats, and the seats are really comfortable. However, what I did want to note when I said this interior was sort of a mix is the fact that this is almost, if not the exact same fabric that I had in my 1998 Dodge Ram. So I think that that's kind of interesting. You know, that's a clear sign that this car was a collaboration, because the gauge cluster is very obviously Mitsubishi, but these seats, to me, very obviously Dodge. So I find that kind of fun. However, speaking of seats, we do have back seats, so begrudgingly, let's go do a backseat review. Oh, wow. All right, so I'm in the back of the Dodge Stealth, but barely by definition. I mean, first let's get my leg in. All right, my leg is in. These seats go down so much that my butt is physically too big to fit into it. If you have kids, maybe, but even I think kids would struggle, because this seat is in a relatively normal position, and there's that much leg room, so not great. If you need back seats, I guess technically this car does have back seats, but yeah, not the best. Let's hop out. We'll take a quick look at the trunk and cargo space, and then we'll talk about the looks. All right, around the back of the Dodge Stealth, little keyhole back here. So it is a hatchback, as you can see, and we don't get too much in here. This actually doesn't go down that far. It maybe goes in, I don't know, 10, 11 inches down to this bottom, which isn't a whole lot. Now you can pull this up. You do get a spare tire, a rather smooth spare tire if I do say so myself. And I do get this pull-out privacy cover. Sorry, I'll get that in frame. I do get this pull-out privacy cover, which is definitely nice. But in terms of hatchbacks in this era, I'm talking Mark III Supra, I'm talking RX-7, I'm talking all those other vehicles, they have way more storage than this. This is kind of lacking in the rear cargo space department, which of course isn't the end of the world. It's not the point of this car, but just something to note. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and I love the look of the Dodge Stealth. It doesn't look like any Dodge that has ever been produced or been produced since. However, what's actually interesting from what I read online, Chrysler was actually in charge of doing the design of this car. So although it doesn't really look like anything that Dodge was producing at the time, it was actually their brainchild. Mitsubishi did the mechanics and Chrysler did the styling. So I find that very, very intriguing. You gotta love the pop-up headlights. You gotta love the white color. I mean, how 90s is this car? I absolutely love that. But now, with all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think finally driving a Dodge Stealth ES? Now, there's a couple of things. First of all, I do want to note that I didn't realize how special the ES trim level was until I started doing my research. I figured the ES would be base. You know, all these automakers, they use ES as meaning different things. Extra special, egg salad, enormous schlong, whatever it might be. The fact that this actually got the dual overhead cam engine as opposed to just the single cam engine that the base model got, I think that that's really a worthy upgrade. You get almost 60 more horsepower just by going up one trim level. I think that that's really cool. But the other reason I think this car is incredibly cool is because of a collaboration. Now, Chrysler and Mitsubishi collaborated on a lot of vehicles. The Mitsubishi Starion / Chrysler Conquest. Of course, the Eclipse and Eagle Talon and all those vehicles like that. And so this car was actually built in Japan. This is a Japanese product imported with the badges swapped for Dodge. And so I just love this as a case study of what the heck was happening over at Chrysler in the 1980s and 1990s. Because the 80s and 90s for Chrysler don't look like any other decade of their legacy. Now they have a very strong brand identity. The Hellcats, muscle, you know, more in your face, more strong vehicles. You have the whole Jeep brand, which really focuses on their World War II heritage. But back in the 80s and 90s, they didn't have much identity. I mean, take a look at this Chrysler LeBaron, and then take a look at this. These came out of technically the same company, not many years apart from one another. That, to me, is really, really cool. And so driving this Stealth today, I get to experience a really interesting period in Dodge's life. They didn't know what they were doing. They didn't have much identity. But you don't get the solid years without the shaky years. And although this was a shaky year, I think it ended up being one of the most memorable ones. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys learned something about the Dodge Stealth. And even if you didn't, I hope you enjoyed just looking at this really clean and awesome example. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.